The stars had never looked so threatening before. Captain Kim Jae-won stood on the observation deck of the International Space Station, staring at the thousands of alien ships that now filled the darkness beyond Earth. Each vessel was larger than anything humanity had ever built, their sleek metallic hulls reflecting the distant light of the sun like the scales of some cosmic predator. "How many are there?" asked Dr. Park So-young, floating beside him with her hands pressed against the reinforced glass. "Our computers stopped counting at 3,000, Jae-won replied quietly. There could be twice that number. Below them, Earth turned slowly in its ancient dance, unaware that its children were staring extinction in the face. The planet looked so peaceful from up here, so beautiful and fragile, that it was hard to believe an armada of alien warships had just arrived to destroy it. The communication came at exactly noon, Greenwich Mean Time. Every radio, television, and computer screen on Earth suddenly displayed the same image. A tall, pale creature with 6 arms and eyes like black diamonds. When it spoke, its voice was translated into every human language simultaneously. "I am Ambassador Zethkar of the Hegemony Coalition. We represent 12 civilizations that have ruled this galaxy for over 50,000 years. Humanity has become a threat that can no longer be ignored." President Lee Myung watched the broadcast from the emergency command center beneath Seoul. Around her, military advisors and scientists stared at the screens in stunned silence. This was the moment every science fiction writer had imagined, but none of their stories had prepared them for the cold reality of facing annihilation. "Your species advances too quickly," the alien continued. "In less than 200 years, you have gone from primitive agriculture to splitting atoms. You wage war constantly, even against your own kind. You consume resources without thought for tomorrow. Most dangerous of all, you refuse to accept limits." Dr. Choi Min-jun frantically took notes as the alien spoke. As Earth's leading expert on theoretical physics, he had been called to the command center along with dozens of other scientists. Nothing in his education had prepared him for this moment. "We have observed your expansion into space," Zethkar said. "We have seen your weapons, your technology, your endless hunger for knowledge and power. If left unchecked, humanity will become a plague upon the galaxy. This cannot be allowed." The alien paused, and for a moment the only sound in command centers around the world was the quiet hum of electronics and the rapid breathing of terrified humans. "Therefore, we offer you this choice. You have exactly 72 hours to surrender completely and unconditionally. Your governments will disband. Your military forces will stand down. Your people will be relocated to planets where they can live safely under our guidance. Refuse this offer, and we will cleanse Earth of all human life. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy." The transmission ended, leaving billions of people staring at blank screens in the command center. President Lee turned to General Nam Hyun-soo. "How long would our forces last against them?" The general's face was grim. "Maybe 6 hours, if we're lucky. Their smallest ships are larger than our biggest battleships. We don't even know what kind of weapons they have. But deep beneath the mountains of Switzerland, in laboratories that officially didn't exist, a different conversation was taking place. Dr. Yang Heron had been working on Project Prometheus for almost 30 years. Ever since the first strange signals had been detected in the space between dimensions. "The quantum resonance chamber is ready," she told her team of 12 scientists. "We've run the calculations 1,000 times. It should work." Dr. Kong Tae-ho looked nervous as he checked his instruments. "Should work. We're talking about opening a doorway to another dimension. What if we can't control what comes through?" Heron stared at the massive machine that filled the underground chamber. It looked like a combination of a particle accelerator and a cathedral, with gleaming metal tubes forming complex geometric patterns around a central void. For 3 decades, they had been trying to prove that other dimensions existed. Now, They needed to do more than prove it. They needed to reach into those dimensions and find something that could save humanity. The readings are consistent, she said. There are entities in the higher dimensions that feed on pure energy. If our calculations are correct, they consume the nuclear fusion that powers stars themselves. The implications were terrifying. These beings, if they truly existed, would be like cosmic hurricanes, barely contained forces of nature that could drain the energy from anything, including the fusion reactors that powered alien spaceships. The government doesn't even know we exist, Kong pointed out. How do we convince them to let us try this? Heron looked at her life's work, then at the countdown timer showing how much time humanity had left. 68 hours and 37 minutes until the aliens would begin their extermination. We don't ask permission, she said finally. We save our species first, then explain later. Above them, the alien fleet waited with the patience of predators who had never known defeat. They had no idea that deep beneath Earth's surface, humanity was preparing to open a door that had been locked since the universe began. The countdown continued, marking the hours until humanity would either surrender or unleash something that would change the galaxy forever. The elevator descended for what felt like forever, carrying President Park Ji-hye deeper into the Earth than she had ever been before. The numbers on the display kept going down. -50 floors, -60, -70. She had not even known these levels existed beneath Geneva. How deep are we going? She asked General Kim Dong-woo, who stood beside her with his face grim and pale. Deep enough that even nuclear weapons cannot reach us, he replied. What you are about to see has been hidden from the world for 30 years. The doors finally opened into a massive underground chamber that looked like something from a science fiction movie. Dozens of world leaders and military commanders were already seated around a circular table, their faces lit by the glow of holographic displays. The air hummed with electricity and fear. Dr. Lee Junho stood at the center of the room, a thin man with tired eyes, who looked like he had not slept in weeks. Behind him, 3 enormous screens showed images that made everyone in the room feel very small and very afraid. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Lee began, his voice echoing in the chamber. What I am about to tell you will sound impossible. But we are facing the end of our species, so impossible things have become necessary. The first screen showed a star system, but something was wrong with it. The star at the center was dim and cold, barely giving off any light. Around it, frozen planets drifted in eternal darkness. This is the Kepler 442 system, Dr. Lee continued. According to our records, it should have a bright, active star. Instead, we've found this A star that has been drained of almost all its energy. He touched a control, and the screen changed to show dozens of similar systems. Dead stars, cold planets, entire solar systems that looked like cosmic graveyards. We have found over 300 systems like this in our part of the galaxy. At first, we thought they were natural phenomena. Stars do die, after all. But then we noticed the patterns. The images changed again, showing energy readings and mathematical equations that hurt to look at. Minister Cho Hyjin, who had a degree in physics, felt her stomach turn as she began to understand what the numbers meant. Something has been feeding on these stars, Dr. Lee said quietly. Not destroying them with weapons, but literally consuming the nuclear fusion that keeps them burning. We call them star devourers. General Kim leaned forward, his knuckles white, as he gripped the table. You are saying there are creatures out there that eat stars? Not creatures in any sense, we understand, replied Dr. Choi Soo-young, Dr. Lee's assistant. She was a young woman with intelligent eyes who looked terrified of what she was about to explain. They exist in dimensions higher than ours. Think of them as cosmic storms made of pure hunger. They have been in the universe since before our galaxy even formed. President Park felt cold sweat on her forehead, and Project Prometheus. Dr. Lee's hands shook slightly as he activated another display. We learned how to create doorways between dimensions, how to send signals into their realm, how to ... invite them into our space. The room erupted in shocked voices. Scientists and military leaders began talking all at once, but Dr. Choi raised her hand for silence. The mathematics involved are beyond anything any other species has achieved, she said. The hegemony, for all their advanced technology, still thinks in terms of 3 dimensions. They cannot even imagine what we have discovered. Through the thick windows of the chamber, they could see flashes of light in the distance. The alien scouts had begun testing Earth's defenses, firing energy beams at satellites and space stations. Humanity's most advanced weapons were being destroyed like toys. Show them the breach chamber, President Park ordered. Dr. Lee nodded and led them through a series of corridors to another massive room. In the center stood a machine that looked like a metal flower made of pure energy. Cables as thick as tree. Trunks fed power into it from 6 different nuclear reactors. The air around it shimmered like heat waves, and looking directly at the center made everyone's eyes water. This is how we open the door, Dr. Lee explained. But once we do, we cannot guarantee what will come through. The Star Devourers are not our servants. They are forces of nature, like hurricanes or earthquakes. We can only hope to guide them toward our enemies. Admiral Yoon Taehyun stared at the machine with a mixture of wonder and horror. What happens to the aliens when these things reach their fleet? Dr. Choi checked her instruments, which were already showing dangerous energy. Readings. Their ships run on fusion power, just like stars. The Star Devourers will drain them completely. But they will not stop there. They can sense stellar energy from hundreds of light years away. They will follow the aliens back to their home worlds. The weight of what she was saying settled on everyone in the room. They were not just talking about destroying an alien fleet. They were talking about potentially wiping out entire civilizations. President Park looked at the faces around her, then at the tactical displays showing the overwhelming alien force approaching Earth. The choice was simple, but terrible. Surrender and watch humanity die, or unleash cosmic horrors that might consume half the galaxy. How long do we have? She asked. 47 hours until their deadline, General Kim replied. Park closed her eyes, thinking of her children, her grandchildren, all the humans who would never be born if she made the wrong choice now. Prepare the machine, she ordered, and may God forgive us for what we are about to do. Above them, Ambassador Veltar received Earth's official response to the ultimatum. The message was only 1 word long: no. He stared at the screen, confused by such simple defiance. Soon, his confusion would turn to something much worse. The lights went out across half of Europe at exactly 14:32 Greenwich Mean Time. Dr. Yang Minsu watched the power readings drop to 0 on his screens, as 3 nuclear power plants pushed themselves beyond their limits and died. The enormous machines that had provided electricity to millions of homes were now feeding every bit of their energy into the dimensional breach chamber deep beneath. Geneva, power levels critical, shouted Dr. Park Yoon-ji from her control station. The underground facility shook like an earthquake was tearing it apart. Metal beams groaned overhead, and several screens cracked from the vibrations. The quantum field is becoming unstable. Minsu gripped his chair as the floor tilted beneath his feet. Around him, 30 years of careful scientific work was being pushed to its absolute breaking point. The machine in the center of the chamber glowed white hot, and the air itself seemed to be bending and twisting in impossible ways. Something is happening to space, called Dr. Kim Jae-hyun, his voice barely audible over the screaming alarms. The dimensional barrier is cracking. Above them, in the cold darkness of space, Captain Lee Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the battleship Defiance. Through the view screen, he could see the alien fleet approaching Earth like a swarm of metal locusts. Each enemy ship was 10 times larger than his own vessel, armed with weapons that could melt through steel like butter. "Sir, we are receiving surrender demands from the alien flagship," reported Lieutenant Choi. Min-Young Hyenwoo stared at the overwhelming enemy force and felt his heart pound with fear and anger. His ship carried only 42 crew members, but each one had volunteered to die fighting rather than live as slaves. "Send them our answer," he ordered. "All ships, prepare for ramming speed." The communications officer looked shocked. "Sir, that is suicide." "Maybe," Hyenwoo replied, "but we will make them remember us." Across the human fleet, similar conversations were happening on dozens of ships. Captains and crews who knew they could not win decided they would at least make the aliens pay dearly for their victory. It was not strategy, it was pure, human stubbornness, refusing to accept defeat. The first collision happened 3 minutes later. The destroyer Hope smashed directly into an alien cruiser, both ships exploding in a ball of fire and metal. Then, the frigate Courage followed, ramming another alien vessel and taking it down with her. On the bridge of the hegemony flagship Eternal Dominion, Commander Velcon watched the human attack with growing confusion and disgust. "These primitives are insane," he said to his tactical officer. "They are deliberately destroying their own ships." "It appears to be some form of ritual combat behavior," the officer replied. "Perhaps they believe their deaths will have meaning." Velcon had conquered 47 different species in his long military career, but he had never seen anything like this. Most civilizations surrendered when faced with impossible odds. These humans seemed to prefer death to submission, and their desperate attacks were actually causing significant damage to his fleet. "Increase firepower," he ordered. "End this madness quickly." But as his weapons officers prepared to destroy the remaining human ships, something appeared on the sensors that made no sense at all. Commander called the science officer, his voice filled with confusion. "I am detecting an energy signature that should not exist." "Explain." "It appears to be coming from the third planet, but the readings are impossible. The energy levels are beyond anything we have ever recorded." Deep in the underground chamber, Dr. Yang Minsu watched his life's work finally succeed. The dimensional breach was opening, tearing a hole between their reality and a place where different rules applied. Through the gap, something ancient and hungry was beginning to notice their universe. "The quantum tethers are holding at 58%, shouted Dr. Park Yunji over the noise. "But I am reading massive energy displacement." The first star devourer pushed through the dimensional tear, like a living shadow made of starlight and hunger. It did not have a physical form in any way humans could understand. Instead, it existed as pure appetite, a cosmic storm that fed on the nuclear fire that powered stars and planets. Minsu felt his mind struggle to process what he was seeing. The entity seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time, shifting and flowing in ways that hurt to look at directly. Ancient mathematical equations that described its movement made his eyes water. "It worked," he whispered, hardly believing his own success. "We actually did it." The Star Devourer paused for a moment, sensing the new universe around it. Then it detected something interesting: the fusion reactors of thousands of alien ships floating in space above the planet, to a being that fed on stellar energy. The hegemony fleet looked like a feast waiting to be consumed. Minsu activated his communication array and spoke directly to the alien flagship. "This is Earth 2 hegemony forces. You came here demanding our surrender. You wanted to see what makes humanity dangerous. Now you will understand." On the Eternal Dominion, Commander Velcon watched his instruments begin showing readings that made no scientific sense. The fusion reactors that powered his mighty ship were losing energy, but not through any damage or malfunction. Something was simply draining the power away. "Commander," his science officer reported, his voice shaking with fear. "Internal temperature is dropping rapidly. All fusion reactors are showing massive energy loss." Around the flagship, other alien vessels began reporting similar problems. Lights dimmed, weapon systems failed, and life support started shutting down as something invisible consumed the very power that kept their ships alive. The Star Devourer had arrived, and it was very, very hungry. The first thing ambassadors noticed was the cold. His flagship, the mighty Eternal Glory, had never been cold before. The ship was powered by 3 fusion reactors that burned hotter than most stars, providing endless energy for weapons, shields, and life support. But now, ice was forming on the walls of the command bridge. "What is happening to our power?" he demanded, his forearms gesturing frantically at the failing displays around him. His chief engineer, a reptilian creature from the desert world of Kethver, stared at readings that made no sense. "Ambassador, our fusion reactors are still running, but something is taking the energy away. It is like ... like something is drinking it directly from the cores." Around the command bridge, crew members from 12 different alien species all wore the same expression of growing terror. These were beings who had conquered hundreds of worlds, who had never known defeat. But now they watched their instruments show impossible things. The Star Devourer moved through their fleet like a living nightmare. It had no physical form that their eyes could see clearly. Sometimes it looked like a shadow made of twisted starlight. Other times it seemed to be a hole in space itself, a hungry void that consumed everything around it. The creature existed partly in their dimension, and partly somewhere else, somewhere that followed different rules. "Sir, the destroyer Swift Death has gone completely dark," reported the communications officer. "All power lost, life support failing." Through the main view screen they could see the destroyer drifting helplessly in space. Its lights had gone out one by one, as something invisible drained every bit of energy from its systems. The crew inside were probably freezing to death in the darkness. "Fire all weapons at that thing," Zarthik ordered desperately. The mighty plasma cannons of the Eternal Glory swiveled toward the Star Devourer and unleashed enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The energy beams struck the creature directly, but instead of causing damage, they simply disappeared. The entity absorbed the weapon energy like a sponge, soaking up water. "It is feeding on our attacks," the tactical officer shouted in horror. On the bridge of another ship, Commander Velkorian watched his own vessel begin to die around him. The lights dimmed to almost nothing, and the air started to feel thin as the life support systems lost power. His crew, brave warriors who had fought in 100 battles, now huddled together like frightened children. "Send a message to the human world," he ordered with his dying breath. "Ask them, ... ask them what they have done to us." The response came immediately. Every screen in the alien fleet suddenly showed the face of Dr. Lim Junwoo, the human scientist, who had been working deep beneath the earth. His eyes were cold and determined as he spoke. "You came to our home with thousands of ships," Dr. Lim said, his voice carrying across space to reach every alien ear. "You threatened to kill every man, woman, and child on our planet. You thought we would simply surrender because you have bigger guns and more ships." Behind him, other human scientists worked frantically at control panels, monitoring the dimensional breach that had brought death to the alien fleet. "You were wrong," Dr. Lim continued. "Humanity may be young, but we have learned something important. Sometimes the best defense is to make yourself too dangerous to attack. You wanted to see what makes us a threat to the galaxy. Now you know." More Star Devourers were pushing through the dimensional gateway now. The first one had been joined by 2 others, then 5, then a dozen. Each creature was drawn by the massive energy signatures of the alien fleet, but they sensed something else as well. The distant glow of fusion reactions happening hundreds of light years away. The home stars of the hegemony civilizations. "They are moving away from our fleet," reported a surviving alien science officer from one of the few ships still functioning, "heading toward the core worlds." Commander Velkorian felt his blood turn to ice as he realized what was happening. These creatures could sense stellar fusion across impossible distances. They were following the energy trails of hegemony technology back to its source, like cosmic predators tracking their prey home. All remaining ships, immediate retreat. He broadcast to the fleet. Full speed to home territories. Warn the core worlds. But even as the alien ships turned and fled, the Star Devourers followed them. The entities moved through space without using any technology humans or aliens could understand, simply appearing wherever they sensed the strongest energy sources. In the Earth Command Center deep beneath Geneva, President Kim Soo-jin watched the tactical displays with mixed feelings of satisfaction and horror. The alien fleet that had come to destroy humanity was now running for their lives. But the creatures pursuing them would not stop at destroying ships. "They will feed on their stars," said General Park Tae-young quietly. "Entire civilizations will freeze to death when their suns go dark." Kim Soo-jin nodded grimly. Perhaps they should have thought of that before threatening to exterminate our species. Dr. Lim Jun-woo checked his instruments one more time, making sure the dimensional breach remained stable. Through the gateway, he could sense more star devourers becoming aware of this universe full of fresh energy to consume. "How many more will come through?" asked Dr. Cho Ha-young, his assistant. "As many as it takes," Lim replied. "We have opened a door that leads to a realm of infinite hunger. The aliens wanted to see us surrender. Instead, they will learn what happens when humanity decides that if we must die, we will not die alone." In the deepest parts of space, ancient suns that had burned for billions of years began to flicker and dim as cosmic predators arrived to feast on their nuclear fire. The galaxy would never be the same. The message came through on every communication channel at once, transmitted from the few surviving hegemony ships that had managed to escape the start of Ambassador Velkarin's voice was broken, desperate. Nothing like the proud and threatening tone he had used just 2 days before. "We surrender," the alien leader said, his words echoing through Earth's command centers. "Completely and without conditions, please. You must call them back. Our stars are dying." Dr. Yoon Min-jun stood in the Project Prometheus control room, staring at readings that made his hand shake. The quantum sensors showed him what was happening across the galaxy, and the numbers were terrifying. 3 different star systems were already going dark as the Star Devourers fed on their nuclear cores. "How many people live in those systems?" asked Dr. Park Ji-young, his assistant. Min-jun checked the calculations twice before answering. "Approximately 47 billion beings across all 3 systems. Their planets will freeze solid within weeks as their suns die." The weight of those numbers settled on everyone in the control room. They had saved Earth, but at the cost of civilizations far older than humanity. Children who had never threatened Earth would die in the cold darkness as their worlds froze. "The quantum tethers are breaking down," reported Dr. Kim Soo-hyun from her monitoring station. "We are losing our ability to control the Star Devourers. Soon they will be completely free to feed wherever they choose." Min-jun studied the complex equations that governed the dimensional breach. The mathematics were clear but cruel. They could probably guide most of the Star Devourers back to their own realm, but it would require closing the dimensional gateway, while some of the creatures were still in normal space. "If we close the breach now, how many will be trapped here?" he asked. Kim Soo-hyun ran the calculations quickly. "At least 1, possibly 2. They would remain in our dimension permanently, with no way for us to send them back." The implications were staggering. A star devourer trapped in normal space would continue to feed on stellar energy for millions of years, slowly consuming every star it could reach. It would be like leaving a cosmic wildfire burning forever. President Lee Yoon-ji entered the control room, followed by General Nam Hyun-soo and Admiral Choi Tae-wook. Her face showed the strain of the past few days, but her eyes remained determined. "Doctor, what choices do we have?" she asked directly. Minjun pointed to the display showing the locations of all the star devourers currently feeding across the galaxy. We can save most of the hegemony worlds by calling the creatures back now, but we will have to leave at least one entity in normal space to maintain the quantum connections. It will remain as a permanent guardian, or threat. The room fell silent as everyone understood what he meant. They could end the immediate crisis, but they would be leaving behind a cosmic monster that could destroy any civilization that threatened Earth in the future. General Nam spoke first. Where would this remaining creature settle? Near their former capital system, Dr. Kim replied. It would slowly consume their primary star over the next 1,000 years. Any ships that approached would be drained of power instantly. President Lee closed her eyes and thought of the billions of alien civilians who were already dying as their suns dimmed. She thought of her own children and grandchildren, who would inherit a galaxy where humanity was either respected or feared. Do it, she ordered. Save what we can, but leave one as a warning. The process of closing the dimensional breach took 6 hours of careful work. One by one, the star devourers were guided back to their realm between dimensions. The quantum mathematics required to accomplish this made several scientists collapse from mental exhaustion. But as planned, one entity remained behind. It settled into the outer regions of the former hegemony capital system, where it began to slowly drain energy from the ancient star that had provided light and warmth to 12 billion beings. 6 months later, Dr. Yoon Minjin stood before the newly formed Galactic Council. The surviving alien civilizations had requested a meeting to discuss the new reality of their galaxy. Representatives from 47 different species sat in the council chamber, all of them looking at the human delegation with expressions of fear and grudging respect. The star devourer near your former capital will remain there permanently, Minjun announced to the assembled aliens. Consider it a monument to what happens when Earth is threatened. Any species that approaches our borders with hostile intentions will discover that we have mastered forces that can unmake stars themselves. As he spoke, images appeared on the chamber's screens, showing the slowly dying star near the hegemony homeworld. The once bright sun now flickered weakly, its light growing dimmer each day as the cosmic predator fed on its nuclear heart. We did not want this war, Minjun continued, but you forced us to choose between surrender and survival. Now you know the price of threatening humanity. When the meeting ended, Minjin walked through the corridors of the space station where the council had met. Through the viewports, he could see ships from dozens of different civilizations, all keeping a respectful distance from the human vessels. He caught sight of his reflection in one of the darkened windows and realized what humanity had become. Not heroes who saved the galaxy, not villains who destroyed it, but something more dangerous, survivors who had proven they would burn down the universe rather than accept defeat. Earth now stood alone among the stars, feared and respected in equal measure. And deep in laboratories beneath Geneva, other dimensional gates waited to be opened. Other cosmic forces waited to be unleashed if humanity was ever threatened again. The galaxy had learned a terrible lesson. Some species, when cornered, become more dangerous than anyone could imagine.